Hey, listening audience, welcome back to Noggin Notes. My name is Jake Wiskerson, and I'm your host. Thanks again for downloading our content. We really appreciate it. Today's topic is on veteran suicide. Now, if you're outside the U.S., it may be worth noting that the term veteran in the United States often refers not just to people who are experienced at their trade, but more often to people who have retired from military service. So we often imply military in front of the word veteran when we say veterans. And who I interviewed today is a guy named Matt Miller. He has a PhD in psychology, and he is the current director of the Veterans Administration's Suicide Prevention Program. And I think the conversation is really interesting, and it bears a lot of merit, especially with as many veterans as we have in this country who are struggling with psychiatric symptoms from their time, being exposed to military duty. And a lot of them are dying at an alarming rate. And it's worth discussing. So that's what we cover in this conversation. I think you'll find it fascinating. I always learn something whenever I interview somebody, and I hope that you do also. Our sponsors, as usual, are Zephyr Wellness and Audible. If you have not checked out Audible, I would be surprised, first of all. But if you haven't and you want to get some good audio content, please go to audibletrial.com/nogginnotes, and you can help us out while helping yourself out. Because what you get there is you get to enroll in a free 30-day trial subscription whereby you can download a free audiobook or any of their other content. It's a really, really wide selection. They like to say that it's totally unmatched in any other platform. But you get that free audiobook download, and you get to keep it even if you cancel your trial session there within the 30 days. So audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. Zephyr Wellness is the other sponsor, and that's a company that I co-own in Reno and Sparks, Nevada here. We have lots of really cool content you can download too for free. Check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Instagram, and our Twitter account. Those are found in various ways by checking out Zephyr Wellness. Take it, share it with a friend, heal yourselves, heal the world, make it a better place. Sorry, no, I'm not Michael Jackson. Anyway, this is my interview with Dr. Matt Miller of the Veterans Administration. Enjoy. Well, on this episode of Noggin Notes, we are talking with Matt Miller, PhD. Dr. Miller, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. For background for the audience, you and I met at a conference. It was a Veterans Administration Lethal Means Suicide Prevention Conference in San Francisco back in February, pre-COVID. And we were all meeting in the same room, maskless, and I'm pretty sure that's how I got sick. But anyway, that's how we met. You were one of the presenters at this fantastic conference, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I actually don't even know what your doctorate degree is in, but you can share that and your background and all that stuff, and then get into the story about how you came to be in this field.
Great. Yeah, actually, Jake, as I look back on it, that was my last official trip. Immediately after that, travel was suspended, so I have not been on the road since that trip. But it was nice meeting you there, and I thought that was a really it was worth it in terms of the time spent there and talking about lethal means safety and suicide prevention. And I think, and I look forward to the questions that you have and the discussion that you have for us today regarding lethal means safety and suicide prevention. But by way of background, the PhD is in psychology and master's in public health. I was a clinical psychologist for the United States Air Force and captain. I served during OEF, OIF. Specialty was working with joint services, pilot trainees. During that time, as chief of mental health at the Joint Services training installation, I experienced the death by suicide of a very close friend, a colleague, a Marine Cobra driver. And as the head of suicide prevention for the installation, and a friend. It was a significant blow for me, personally and professionally. It sent me into a time of a lot of questions, um, some existential, some practical. But I came through the time with a commitment to suicide prevention. It's not something that I was ever interested in my training in mental health or psychology, but it definitely changed my course. I went to work and joined the mission of the VA as a chief of mental health at the local level in Saginaw, Michigan, and then ended up as head of the Veterans Crisis Line for a couple of years, which led then to now being the head of suicide prevention for the VA and VHA under the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. It's kind of a fancy way of saying something really important and practical that we do, and we are over the policy, the programs, the research that takes a look at suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention across clinical and community settings for our veterans.
I want to dive into that, and certainly the research, and I want to kind of unpack some of those terms that you used, postvention and intervention and whatnot, and prevention. But I want to go back, if you don't mind, and hover a little bit on the experience that you had of losing a friend while in a mental health directorship position. I know that we have some clinicians who follow this show as well as just general audience, and that's got to give a person pause. I mean, I work in this world. I'm a marriage and family therapist by trade, and I've had some negative outcomes with some clients, and certainly my interns have, and I can't really wrap my head around the idea of losing a friend when I work in the profession. It seems, I don't know. I guess I'm asking if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more of your process through that. To maybe give some validation and some context to other people who may be struggling with something similar.
Yeah. The research shows that somewhere between 128 to 135 individuals are meaningfully impacted by any one suicide. And I definitely, in this situation, found myself within that group. It was the first time that I've experienced the overlap and confluence between personal friend, buddy, and a professional role. When you're in grad school and the Ivy Tower, if you will, they teach you clean, safe, and appropriate lines between personal and professional. And you're in the military, particularly in a combat training and implementation sort of setting. You live with people, you deploy with people, and simultaneously you're serving as a mental health professional in those settings. And that's a lot like it was with John. I would give numerous suicide prevention briefings, and John would be sitting right beside me or in the front row with his flight. So I think, to me, it took it to a new level of personal impact, and with that, I think it took it to a new level of I want to say responsibility, but that's really not the heart of the word. I think blame is more true to what the experience was for me. Blame. What did I miss? How could I miss this? The sort of self-critical comments of, you're the mental health professional and the only one on the installation in charge of mental health, and you missed it in your own friend. What does that mean in terms of what else you're missing? What does that mean in terms of what we're all missing? And so I think that took it to a new level, and was a different experience for me than in the prior, where there wasn't quite that same personal overlap into personal situations.
You know, a lot of people ask, you know, when they come in for treatment, you know, they want to know how. You know, we're living in a world of certainty, and we want to know things and be predictable in what's going to come. So I guess even though it's not maybe generalizable to all people, I'd like to know how you managed to get through and come out the other side doing what you do. You're obviously, you know, healthy now, and you're leading a great effort and so on and so forth. But what were the particulars of moving through that weird period in your life with all that guilt and doubt and all that?
Well, I think the how wasn't always pretty, Jake. I think I had to spend some time working through some things that had some internal processes. Heck, it even had some externalizations as well. Take a picture of me back then, and the hair was down to the shoulders. I think there were different ways of expressing the fact that I was struggling with the rules. I was struggling with the if and when equations that I thought guided everything so neatly and cleanly. And I mean, really, it came to a point for me where I was, believe it or not, I was sitting and watching a television show, and it was a news documentary on veteran suicide. I was alone in the basement and sitting there, and really had run out of energy to change the channel, and thought, all right, let's just watch this. In the interview, it was tough. It was tough to watch. It was with a VA. It was with the VA, and talking about the problem of veteran suicide and how it's increasing and becoming even more problematic. And for me, that was a moment where I had to come face to face and say, all right, Matt, you can keep asking the existential questions, you can keep asking the metaphysical questions, and you can keep treading water, or you can do something. Are you going to do something about this? Is it right and respectful to John and your experience with John and what he's taught you to do something about this? And so at that point, I decided it was a bit like it was painful internally. It's that feeling of sitting in some sort of service, and you're like, you feel the call to stand up and go to the front. Are you going to do it? I hopped on to usajobs.gov and said, well, I don't know what positions are in the VA. I know as a chief of mental health in the Air Force, so maybe that's what I would be. And I put out applications for chief of mental health and was honored and through grace selected at the Saginaw VA, and for them to trust me. And then I went from there. But you know, really, it's not like, Jake, it's been a clean before and after process. I mean, I think there's still times and unique things I have to work through. Going through Suicide Prevention Month and telling my story, I was exhausted last year, so I had to learn new ways of caring for self, and working through that new level of disclosure and sharing. So it's an ongoing process, but I am encouraged and fueled by the fact that I really believe